Hello. Facebook is being weird again, so I'm just gonna do it here on Instagram. So we're chatting today about accessibility, about community work, and yeah, I'd love to know your experiences with this. If you have any ideas, I'd love to share them with the clinicians in my community, because this is something that it's really important to talk about, and I think a lot of clinicians are wanting to do this, and we want to do it in a way that's sustainable and actually helping. And of course, accessibility covers a lot of things, but today we're mainly talking about socioeconomic aspects of accessibility and like doing community work with your practice or in your profession, essentially. Okay, so I wanted to start with my own story, and you can let me know what you resonate with, things that you can relate to, and it was sort of a what not to do. So that's where I'll start, and then I'll sort of touch on some of the points that I'll be making with that. So when I had my own practice, my thought was very much, I'm in this profession to help people. I'm not in it for the money, right? So like, I don't care about money. I just care about helping people, which sounds very noble and wonderful, but the effects can be not what you expect them to be. And I just thought, like, if I'm just helping people, I'll be happy. And what follows that is sort of, the more I'm helping people, the better. And my view was like, if I'm helping people who, don't have as much access or can't afford it as much, that is helping more than helping people who are already kind of privileged and have money and all of that, right? So to me, that was helping more. So I was like, how can I help more? And very much this idea of like, I don't care about the money. And so what happened was, or what I would do is I would offer discounted treatments, I would offer free treatments, and this would be literally anyone who like mentioned that money was a factor. Like, even if I just had some sort of sense that they're like, oof, I don't know about like paying for this treatment or whatever, I would discount it or I'd give it for free. So what I did was I pledged a certain amount of my income to World Spine Care, which is awesome. I love that idea. But I did it when I literally was barely earning anything in my practice, right? So it was like from day one. It wasn't when I was already established or already making a decent income in my practice. It was like from day one, which effectively, I wasn't really making anything, and then the little that I was making, I was pledging like quite a significant portion of that towards Spine Care. I don't remember what the percentage was, but I remember I had a coach then, and she was like, "That is a lot. That is a huge percentage." So it was like this very it just didn't make a lot of sense. And then often the people that I was like helping, or I would give discounted treatments to, or completely free treatments to, they were often people that were less compliant with their care and actually gave me more headaches than the people who I was actually charging, or charging full price. There was one patient that I gave her, I think, a treatment free or something like that, and then the next one she had to pay for, and then she like stalled on the payments and she ignored my call. She didn't pay for it. There was another patient who I agreed to treat. I think it was like 3 treatments I would cover, or like not charge her for, and then the 4th one she would pay, or it was something like that. But for this patient, I literally ended up going in on a Saturday, especially for her. She was the only person booked on a Saturday, so I was going into my practice especially for her, and she didn't pay. And I remember it got to the point where like it was the time where we agreed on like, okay, now you would start paying, and she just refused to, and she got so angry, and she stormed out of my practice and never came back. So there was often like this, that those were almost like the trickier patients, and me thinking like, people are going to be so grateful for this, and that they're going to be so compliant with their care, and they're going to be so grateful, and they're going to appreciate me so much. And actually those are the people that ended up being the opposite of that. So, and this is obviously, I'm just identifying some of the pitfalls. Is not to say like everyone who needs help is going to be like this. It's just a pitfall that I want to touch on a little bit later. And then I looked at opening a second location for my practice before the first one had even like started making money. So I wanted to have a second location in another area where, socioeconomically people were less advantaged, and then to almost have those two practices. And that, again, awesome idea. However, doing it when the first one wasn't even established was not a great idea. And then, the result of all of this, in the end, it was obviously other factors as well. There was COVID that hit. There was other doubts that I had and things I was grappling with when it comes to my actual career. But all in all these factors ended up me not actually having a successful practice. So there's a few things that I wanted to highlight about, what not to do when it comes to accessibility and community work. But the first one is it sometimes becomes more about us and our discomfort. Like for me, it was discomfort around money, that I felt like I shouldn't be earning money. There was discomfort around my privilege. Like I'm already privileged. I shouldn't be earning more money or like being more successful or whatever. I should be like dedicating my life to helping other people. So it's often around almost like a way to discharge our discomfort, more than it is about helping other people, like genuinely helping other people. We often do it in a way that is not sustainable to ourselves, and it's coming at a cost to ourselves. So for example, for me, it was mainly like financially. So I was doing it in a way that was not sustainable for me financially, right? Like I needed to be more established in order to do that. I needed to not, do so many discounted or free treatments or whatever it is. So that was one of the aspects. And then when I'm just giving more, or when I'm going into practice on a Saturday just for this patient, there is this resentment that builds up. And for a lot of clinicians, if this is happening at a high volume, or it's happening frequently, it can be something that also causes them to burn out. So I just want to sort of highlight that when we are doing it in a self-sacrificing way, in a way that is coming at a cost to us, that is something that is not going to be sustainable, in the sense that our practice itself might fail, might not be able to run. It might be that we are burnt out, or we are exhausted, we're resentful, and we don't want to continue that. So in the long term, we actually end up being able to help less than if we hadn't done those things in the first place. So I just want to highlight that, because I do genuinely believe that community work, that helping people who are less able to afford it, is really an important part of our career. And I think it's something that we need to take seriously. But taking it seriously means that we are also making sure that it is done in a sustainable way, and in a way that we've really thought out what is the best way to do this. And then, part of that is like when we're not even established yet. So this is also something I've been grappling with now with my coaching practice, because it started to be something that I wanted to address, of like, how am I going to address that question of accessibility, community work. And I have like all these cool plans, but I had to sort of remind myself that I don't need to be doing it now, when I've just started my coaching practice recently. I don't need to be already trying to solve that problem. So the way that I kind of thought about it is like, whether this is like generations or how long people have been in their particular profession or whatever. But I almost thought of it as like there are people that are building up to a certain place in their career. Like once you're already very established, you've got a very secure base, and now you are adding the aspects of community care to your practice. Those are the people that are carrying this like responsibility at the moment. And then I'm working up to the point where I'm stable, and then I can add that, and it's almost like we're passing on the baton to the next group of people and then the next. So almost sharing that responsibility and not thinking like, because there's this very strong feeling like it's very urgent. And in a lot of ways it is, particularly in a country like South Africa, but also just remembering that it's not me on my own that's going to solve this problem, right? It's going to be all of us contributing, and there are going to be stages of your practice or your business where this is most appropriate, and I need to trust that other people are doing that work at the moment. Then I will be, my sort of generation or my the people that are in the same places in their business are then taking over from that, and then we'll pass that on to other people later. So that kind of framework helped me to kind of settle in and to say like, this is something I'm taking very seriously, and I want it to be something that's sustainable. I want it to be a very impactful endeavor. And because I'm taking it so seriously, I know that right now forcing myself to have that aspect before I am established is not going to be helpful to anyone, to myself or the people I'm helping. So I think just remembering that if we really are serious about it, and it's not just I want to say like performing, we're not just performing accessibility and community work, we're not just performing that or feeling like, oh, we should be doing that, and it's almost a way to rid ourselves of that discomfort that comes with the obligation. We're not doing it to discharge our own discomfort. We are doing it in a genuine way, and it's not about whether I people on the outside see me doing these things. It's not about that. So if we are really serious about it, we will do it in a way that's much more sustainable for us in terms of our own needs, in terms of like rest, our physical needs, resting our body, and then also in terms of finances and being sort of established financially first and being very secure. It doesn't help we become part of the people who are struggling financially in order to help people who are struggling financially. That doesn't make any sense. So just making sure that you're doing it in a way that is actually taking this question quite seriously. And in order to do that, we will do it in a way that is more sustainable and actually making an impact, because we know we're going to be doing this still in 5, 10, 15 years. So yeah, that was the one aspect. So there are a few sort of like little ideas on like how you could maybe implement this, but that's sort of more the overarching, let's say, like the approach we're taking. We're not doing it in a way that is self-sacrificing, and we're not doing it in a way that is actually not sustainable for us financially or otherwise. Okay, so the first idea is to build yourself up to a certain threshold financially. So you can come up with that specific number of like, when I have built up this much, that's when I will feel, secure or stable or whatever. And then you will, and then at that point you will do various types of community work, or however that looks to you. And the reason I say that is because we want to be established financially first, but we also don't want it to just be this constantly moving, like the goalposts are constantly moving, because we often wait for that time when we feel financially secure, but a lot of the time we never reach that feeling. So sometimes we need sort of just, even if it's like a general idea of an amount, that this is what I want my income to be, before I start doing that. And that can actually be a way to also motivate you to actually get your practice financially viable. And to actually make more money in your practice, because you know that the more money you make, the more and the quicker you'll be able to help others. And this is where often you'll be able to identify whether it's discomfort around money itself. I am doing the clinician gathering that we do with women clinicians on Saturday. We're talking more about money and beliefs we have around money and discomfort. I also did a live previously on that, so I can link that to this live as well. But just realizing that actually making more money in my practice is actually a good thing, because it gets me closer to doing this work as well. And then also the more stable that I am financially, the more I'm able to help. Like if I could pledge, a certain percentage of my income towards Spine Care, and I was making a ton of money in my practice, like guess how much money they'd be getting, right? Versus the person who's like barely making anything and like, oh yes, but I'm getting so much of my income towards Spine Care. Like if your income is so low, it's not really that helpful. So, and that's the one aspect. So having a certain idea of when I'm at this point financially, that's when I will start to do XYZ. The second is, when we are thinking about how to do it or what to do in terms of community work, think about it's not necessarily going to be bringing in income, but it needs to have something that it's bringing in, right? So that could be a source of meaning. It could be, this is the thing that I feel genuinely that everybody needs, and I'm so excited to bring it to more people. Some sort of joy in that. So the reason I'm saying this is that if you are already, let's say resentful of it, or it's just something you're doing out of obligation or whatever it is, there's not going to be as much sustainability in that. So if we have that sense of joy and fulfillment in the work that we're doing, it becomes less important that we're not earning money from that. So this is also something that you can look at in terms of, so let me maybe use again another example this from me again. So I worked in a community setting as well, but my idea was that as soon as I am helping people and helping people in that way, right, community work, I will be really happy. And so it was quite a shock to me and my identity when I was helping and I was doing community work and I was really not enjoying it. So I didn't have that sense of fulfillment in my work itself, that I would be happy to do it, regardless of whether I'm getting an income. Whereas now, the way that I feel about what I'm doing now is very different. Now I would go and do this work even if I wasn't paid for it. So this can be a how would you say it? Almost the way that the other one is triggering thoughts that you might have about money. This can also be something that triggers thoughts that you might have about your actual career. Right, if you don't actually want to do it when you're not getting income for it, you might start to notice that it's actually not something you enjoy or find fulfilling, or just something that you feel is so impactful and meaningful that you would want to do it, that you feel so excited about other people having the access to it. Okay, so that's one thing. So just some way of getting that joy and that fulfillment and excitement about what you do back, if that's something you've kind of lost a little bit. Okay, so then the third one is thinking about, this is what one of my coaches talks about a lot, is what she calls building a body of work. So essentially thinking of, if you want people to have access to free resources, right? So let's say you want someone to have access to a video series about how to, essentially like when they are having back pain, what they can do for themselves without, let's say, needing to come and see you, right? That's a way to be more accessible. So they have access to information and resources, and you really want to do that. Again, we don't want to be suddenly working through the night to create these video resources and stuff like that and ending up burning out ourselves. But think of it as just slowly building up resources. Like sometimes I'll make a booklet, sometimes I'll make a video, and as I'm doing that, I'm creating more and more resources that people could access for free or at a very low cost. That still helps them with the same things that I would be helping, even if it's not necessarily completely getting the full benefit. So for example, like if you were, struggling in your career or you're struggling with your health and you are a clinician, you can come to my, for example, Facebook page or my Instagram, and you can access videos of like all topics. So someone can access free resources from me without necessarily working with me, and it'll help them with a similar thing. And again, that's not to say that it will help you with to the extent that someone else is when they're paying for it, but it's to have that accessibility to resources when people are not at the point where they want to pay money for it. So you could have things that that people have access to in terms of resources when they are not able to pay you, or maybe when they're saving up to be able to pay you, or whatever it is. Right? So some way to help them without them accessing kind of your full service. So think about building up a kind of body of resources for patients. And then part of that could be something like the idea of a certain amount of free treatments that I give in a month, right? And then saying if someone would like free treatments, and I'm saying, all the slots that I have for that Tavia are currently occupied, but I will let you know next month when another slot opens up that you can access that. So almost putting a limit on how many treatments in a month you will do for free or at a discounted rate or whatever the case is. So there can be that aspect, like limiting the amount that you'll give. Whereas for me, in the story that I told you, I was just like, whenever someone like mentioned finances, I was like, okay, I'll discount it or I'll give it to you for free, whatever it is. And I will say that that was kind of tied to the one example that I gave. But generally, people will be more invested in the service when they are financially contributing to it. So when I talk about, I thought that those patients would be my most compliant, and they would do the exercises because they're getting free care, like you think that that's how it goes, but often it's the opposite. So sometimes people do need, like, what do you call it, skin in the game or whatever. They need to be paying a certain amount. So I would also advise that, like, you think about having a very low fee rather than completely having free care, or having just a certain amount of free slots in that in the month, for example. One of my other mentors also said make sure that it's at a different location, because you are paying rent for your practice, right? Which means that when a patient sees you at your practice and they're not paying, you are essentially paying for their care. So he was saying, like, have a different location where you pay, very low rent, or you sharing rooms with other people where you aren't subsidizing the patient as much. And then also, for example, this is, I don't know what it's like in other countries, you can also maybe let us know. But in South Africa, we have, for example, the chiropractic, where you can study it. There are clinics as well where you can go and get very affordable care. So if people aren't willing to drive there and to make use of that, they're probably not that serious about getting affordable care. They're probably just trying to make you discount your rate, right? So having some sort of, in some way, a screening for people who are just going to complain about your rates and don't want to pay that, versus people who genuinely need that and who will do whatever it takes to access that. There's also another idea is adding some sort of, this is like similar to the body of work, having resources and stuff like that, but there can also be a virtual aspect where you maybe don't have to pay rent in a whole nother building, but you are giving someone a virtual consultation. And that can be, let's say, you're giving more advice than you are physically treating. It can also be like, a group of people who are struggling with the same thing, and you give some sort of like webinar on that or some sort of access to information on that. So there can be virtual tools that you can use as part of this sort of accessibility and community work. And then the other aspect is just, it doesn't necessarily have to be through your actual work, right? So what I mean by that is, if you are a chiropractor or a physiotherapist or whatever the case is, you don't have to give treatments away as your community care and as the accessibility, right? It can be what I mentioned earlier about like resources and stuff, but it can also be completely unrelated, or in some sense unrelated to the actual work that you're doing. So this could also be, for example, the thing that I mentioned about donating a certain amount of your funds either to a specific organization that does the work that you do, but at a community level. Like that could be World Spine Care, for example. You could give a certain amount per month or per year, whatever it is. You could also give to other community things that aren't necessarily to do with your work, right? So if we are just looking at, I want to contribute and I want to do community work and I want to help people in another way, it doesn't necessarily have to be just doing your work but for free or at a discounted rate. It can also be completely, a separate thing. Okay, cool. I think that was the main thing. The other thing that I wanted to just touch on, this is not necessarily to do with like ideas, but it was just something that I wanted to mention, which is this idea of culturally competent care. And there are different resources and stuff that I can guide you towards, but I just wanted to mention the overarching idea of, we need to be doing this work from a certain place and with a certain seriousness and I guess respect for the people that we are helping. And again, sort of like I was mentioning earlier, it's not about discharging our own discomfort or performing this community work, right? Like performing helping. It's about genuinely helping. And so it's just about, this can be language, it can be culture, like how are you learning more about how that culture expresses pain, for example. It's just like small details like that where you are taking seriously this question of, I want to learn more about the people that I'm helping, especially if they are not the community that I'm from, to really be serious in your quest to understand them, and not just be coming from this like almost like doing things from pity or like, I'm better than you and I'm helping you, am I not so amazing? So yeah, that can involve different things. Sometimes it's even learning another language. It can be learning just like a cultural language, and often just the way that you engage with this work is really, really, really important. So just another aspect that we need to look at when we are doing this. All right, I think that is it. Please let me know if there are any specific things that you want to chat more about, and we can go in another direction with this, because there's so much to this, of course. So we just touched on like a few of the areas, but I hope my story of what not to do was helpful for you. And yeah, let me know your stories as well. I'd love to know also just ideas from people who have tried things or have successfully done things, because I think it's always great to have examples of things, so that when clinicians are trying to do this, that I have ideas and kind of examples of like, look what this person did. So I'd love to hear your stories. Please let me know. Awesome. Have a great afternoon, and I'll chat to you guys soon.